Zai, let me be alone for a moment, just for a little while. His voice was hoarse, like a rusted hinge, every word dragging a heavy tail. That near-pleading tone made your heart clench, freezing you in place. The cut on your ankle from the glass started to sting with a burning pain. I just wanted to ask if you'd eaten. Your voice lowered, carrying a grievance you hadn't even realized was there. Looking at his furrowed brows and eyes red with fatigue, the words "today is our anniversary" stuck in your throat, impossible to say. The prepared cake and gift now felt completely out of place. He raked a hand through his hair in frustration, his gaze sweeping over the chaotic floor. Look at this mess, I'm even more of a mess inside. Exhausted to the bone, he subconsciously tried to turn away from this suffocating reality, his arm swinging back blindly. The back of his arm smashed into your wrist. The force was significant. Caught completely off guard, you cried out and lost your balance, stumbling backward. Bang! You crashed onto the cold floor tiles, your hands instinctively shooting out to break your fall right onto several shards of jagged glass. A sharp piercing pain made you gasp, your vision swimming with black spots. Zai. It was as if a bucket of ice water had been dumped over him. He snapped awake in an instant. All his irritation was instantly replaced by sheer terror. The document slipped from his nerveless fingers as he practically threw himself to the ground beside you, frantically reaching for your wrist. Where did I get you? Your hand. Glass. His voice was shaking uncontrollably, his eyes darting over your body in a panic to find the injury. His deep-seated protective instinct was being crushed under a wave of agonizing guilt. I didn't mean to. Damn it, he stammered, slamming a fist against his own leg in frustration. Tears sprang up without warning. You didn't look at his hand, reaching out and trembling slightly, nor at his face full of remorse. You just bit the inside of your lip, enduring the stinging pain in your palm and ankle, and silently braced yourself against the cold floor, standing up bit by bit. The child inside you, who felt so wronged by the unmet expectations, was now struck again by this accidental injury and the cold reality. This place was his home, not yours. That realization felt particularly sharp today. I see, you said softly, avoiding the thick swirling mixture of heartache and panic in his eyes. Your voice was as light as a sigh, dragging your injured foot. You moved step by step in silence toward the bedroom door. You knew he had a bad stomach and often forgot to eat when he was busy. At noon, you took a thermos to his office. Pushing open the door, you found him staring at his computer screen, his brow furrowed into a tight knot, his face pale. Daddy? You called softly. He snapped back to reality, seeing you. A flicker of surprise and a faint trace of warmth crossed his eyes, only to be immediately swallowed by heavy exhaustion. Zai, why are you here? His voice was incredibly raspy. I brought you some lunch. You placed the thermos on the desk and lifted the lid, the aroma of the food wafting out. He paused for a moment, staring at the steaming meal, his Adam's apple bobbing. Without a word, he picked up his chopsticks and started eating hurriedly, his movements fast. He was clearly starving. You sat quietly on a small stool nearby, watching him finish every last bite. Only then did a small sense of relief surface in your heart. It felt good to be able to take care of him. The anniversary, let it go if he forgot. He needs rest right now. He put down his chopsticks and rubbed his temples, his voice thick with weariness. Thanks for your hard work, Zai. The project hit a snag. The competitors poached our core team members, so a lot of work has to be redone. It was the first time he had explained anything to you. Is there anything I can do to help? You asked, unable to hold back. Even if it was just organizing files. He forced a smile and reached out to pat your head. His touch very light. Be a good girl. If you can take care of yourself, I can rest easy. Go back now, it's a mess here. He pushed the empty thermos toward you. His eyes drifting back to the depths of the screen. You nodded, picked up the thermos, and walked to the door, unable to resist looking back. He was already immersed in the pile of documents again, his silhouette looking like a bow stretched to its breaking point. Your heart felt a bit bitter, aching slightly. You knew he would be coming home a little earlier tonight, so you specially made his favorite dishes and placed that small crookedly decorated cake in the center of the dining table. You sat on the sofa waiting, feeling a little nervous and a little expectant. Would he see the cake? Would he remember? The sound of the key turning in the lock made your heart race. He pushed the door open, his tall figure radiating exhaustion. He kept his head down while changing his shoes, not noticing the setup in the living room at all. Daddy? You called out softly. He looked up, his face wearing a heavy, numb expression. His eyes swept over you, and he responded a bit dully. Have you eaten yet? I made. You stood up, trying to guide his attention to the dining table. Zai, he interrupted you, his voice weak with exhaustion. I'm really tired. My brain feels like it's going to explode. He irritably pulled off his tie and tossed it onto the sofa, walking straight toward the fridge to grab a bottle of cold water. As he passed the dining table, the strap of his briefcase caught the corner of the tablecloth. Crash, bang, the tablecloth was yanked, and the glasses, plates and cake on top were instantly dragged down and smashed. The harsh sound of shattering glass erupted. Your carefully prepared cake smashed onto the floor, the cream turning into a mushy mess. Plates shattered, and glass shards flying everywhere. You stared at the chaotic mess, your heart sinking heavily. That small cake, a symbol of your anniversary, was completely destroyed. Your expectations felt like a pricked balloon, leaving nothing but cold disappointment. He froze in place, staring at the disaster he had caused, the color draining from his face instantly. The next second, he crouched down frantically, trying to salvage the situation, his voice on the verge of breaking down. Damn it. I'm so sorry, Zai Zai. I didn't mean to. He picked up a piece of cake smeared with cream, his finger sliced by the sharp edge of a glass shard. A bead of blood instantly welled up and dripped onto the white cream, glaringly bright. Your gaze landed on his bleeding finger, then moved to his bloodshot eyes filled with remorse and despair. In that moment, all the suppressed grievances, the forgotten date, the disregarded affection, and now this chaotic mess surged up all at once. That was our 3-year anniversary cake. Your voice was soft, but it pierced through the chaos like an ice pick. A dead silence fell over the living room, broken only by his ragged breathing and the thick, palpable despair. He watched the blood mix with the cream dripping from his fingertip, then looked at your pale, silent face. His tall frame hunched over slightly, looking like a helpless child who had done something wrong. You didn't say another word. You turned and walked silently toward the bedroom. With every step, your ankles seemed to throb even more. You didn't lock the door. You didn't know how much time had passed long enough for you to be curled up in the corner of the bed. Your cheek pressed against the cool pillow as tears slid silently down your face. The door was pushed open very gently. In the dim light, his tall figure looked slightly stooped. He walked silently to the bedside and crouched down. Cool fingers, carrying the texture of ointment, suddenly covered the stinging wound on your ankle. Hiss. You instinctively tried to pull your foot back. Don't move, Zai Zai. His voice was incredibly hoarse, thick with a nasal tone and uncontrollable trembling. That hand, usually warm and dry, was now cold and rough, yet it held your ankle with extreme care. His fingertip, smeared with ointment, applied it bit by bit to the slender wound, incredibly lightly and slowly. His movements were clumsy, but they held a sense of near-submissive cautiousness. The ointment soothed the stinging pain, and that careful, almost reverent touch brushed against the cracks in your heart like a feather. You still didn't turn around, but the tightly strung cord in your body relaxed just a fraction. After applying the medicine, he didn't pull his hand away immediately. Instead, he used his palm to gently wrap around your cool ankle and calf, as if trying to transfer his warmth to you. Then the mattress sank beside you. He sat down. In the darkness, he remained silent for a long time. So long that you thought he wouldn't speak again. I'm sorry, he finally said, his voice broken beyond repair, thick with choking sobs. The project, it fell apart. The team is gone. I'm scared that I can't handle it, scared that I can't support sister, and that I can't take care of you. The last few words were nearly swallowed by his suppressed weeping. He raised his uninjured hand and roughly wiped his face, his broad shoulders trembling uncontrollably in the dark. The strong shell he had been holding up by sheer force of will completely collapsed in this moment, revealing a vulnerability and fear he had never shown before. It turned out that what he had been desperately shouldering was the fear of losing the ability to protect the people he loved. Your heart shook violently, as if struck by a heavy hammer. It turned out that behind his silent pressure lay such deep fear. That Daddy, who seemed omnipotent in your eyes, had such a fragile side too. You slowly turned over. In the darkness you reached out. Instead of hugging his trembling back, you gently took hold of his injured fingers, the ones he hadn't had time to treat, still stained with dried blood and ointment. His body froze instantly, and then, as if that small touch had infused him with strength, he tightly, desperately clasped your hand in his. His grip was so hard it felt like he might crush your bones, holding on with the desperation and gratitude of a drowning man clutching a piece of driftwood. He lowered his head and his scalding tears splashed onto the back of your interlocked hands, burning hot. You reached out with your other hand, groping in the dark to gently, clumsily wipe the wet trails from his face. Silly Daddy. Your voice was thick with emotion too. We'll get through this together. In the darkness, there were no candles, no cake, only clasped hands, the scent of cool ointment, scalding tears, and the sound of two heartbeats finding reliance in the ruins and pressing tightly together. The wound on your ankle still throbbed faintly, but the heavy yet real temperature in your palm told you that this home was yours. The road ahead might be difficult, but it was no longer his silent battlefield to fight alone. After applying the ointment to your ankle, he still refused to let go of your hand, his thumb repeatedly rubbing the shallow cut on your palm made by the glass, as if in silent repentance. In the dark, his breathing gradually steadied, but you could still hear occasional suppressed gasps. That was the instinctive reaction of someone who had held it together for too long, finally dropping their guard. He gripped your hand, his thumb rubbing the shallow mark again. The rough texture carried a burning apology. In the darkness, his breathing settled, yet faint gasps came intermittently, like a candle flame dampened by rain, trembling weakly in his chest. Your other hand rested on his cheek, fingertips brushing against tear stains that weren't quite dry. He suddenly turned his head, his nose gently rubbing against your palm, carrying the cool dampness of recent crying. The movement was light, like a kitten testing the waters, yet it made your heart suddenly skip a beat. Before you could react, he tilted his head up slightly, his warm lips first landing on the inside of your wrist, where the red mark from his accidental bump this afternoon still lingered. It was as light as a feather brushing past, carrying the bitter scent of ointment and the faint smell of tobacco on him. You instinctively tensed your fingertips, but he gripped tighter. His other hand gently cupped the back of your neck, pressing your hand against his cheek as his lips slowly moved upward, finally covering yours. There was no urgent entanglement, only careful tenderness. His lips were slightly cool, still trembling, but so gentle it made the tip of your heart tremble. It was like making up for the mistake during the day or confirming that you were still by his side. Every light peck carried heavy guilt and cherishing. You closed your eyes, feeling the tickle of his eyelashes brushing under your eyes, and feeling his shoulders gradually relax. It turned out that this person who always wore strength on his face could also use such a clumsy kiss to speak of the fear and care hidden deep in his heart. The temperature of your palm. Morning light filtered through the gap in the curtains, casting dappled spots on the floor. You were woken by the warm sensation in your palm. He was still holding your hand, his thumb still gently rubbing that shallow mark, his breathing falling evenly on the top of your head, as light as a feather. You moved your fingers, and he woke immediately. His eyelashes trembled. When he opened his eyes, they were misty with sleep. Seeing you awake, his Adam's apple bobbed, and his voice was husky. Morning, morning. You squeezed his hand back, your gaze falling on his fingertips, where a band-aid was still stuck last night. He had only focused on treating your wound. You were the one who had to find gauze to bandage his hand later. He followed your gaze and looked down, smiling with a touch of self-mockery. Yesterday really was. It's all in the past. You cut him off, reaching out to smooth the wrinkle between his brows that hadn't quite faded. About the project, we'll figure it out together. He froze, then pulled you into his arms, resting his chin on the top of your head. His grip was firm but not painful. Just right, so you could hear the steady beat of his heart. Okay, together. The following days were indeed harder than imagined. He left early and returned late every day, sometimes coming back reeking of alcohol and falling asleep as soon as he hit the sofa. You didn't ask any more questions, just warming up hangover soup and placing it on the nightstand before sleep, and getting up half an hour early to make his favorite breakfast, shoving warm milk into his hands. Occasionally, when he returned late at night, he would sit by the bed and watch you for a long time, then gently pull you into his arms and mumble, "Thank goodness I have you." You knew he had suffered grievances outside, so you didn't speak, just patting his back like soothing a weary beast. The turning point came half a month later, when you went to the supermarket for groceries. You ran into your university classmate Lin Yu. He worked in design, and hearing that your partner was struggling with the project's visual proposal, he offered to help take a look, saying, "We're old classmates, no need to be polite." Thinking it could lighten his burden, you exchanged contact information. Lin Yu was efficient, sending over a preliminary proposal the very next day. When you took the tablet to show him, he was rubbing his temples while staring at the computer, but his eyes finally lit up the moment he saw the plan. "Is this guy reliable?" he asked. "He was the top student in our department back in college, so there definitely won't be a problem." You vouched for Lin Yu, not noticing the way his fingertips tightened slightly. From that day on, your contact with Lin Yu increased. Sometimes it was to confirm details of the proposal. Sometimes he asked you about project requirements. After all, he didn't know your partner's work habits, and many things needed you to relay them. Fearing he might overthink it, you would voluntarily show him the chat logs every time. He would always nod and say got it, but his brows gradually began to knit together. The first explosion happened on a Friday night. You met Lin Yu at a cafe to revise the proposal. Before leaving, you told him, "I'll be back late," aligning details with Lin Yu. He was on a call at the time and only gave a mumbled response. When you returned holding the revised documents, you pushed open the door and found him sitting on the sofa, an unlit cigarette between his fingers. The living room lights were off, with only the glow from his phone screen illuminating his tense profile. "You're back?" His voice was heavy, as if rolling from the depths of his throat. You didn't notice anything wrong and walked over to show him the plan. "Look, this version Lin Yu revised." Before you could finish, he suddenly raised his hand and knocked the documents out of your hand. The papers scattered all over the floor, the rustling sound piercingly loud in the silent living room. You froze, looked up at him, and only then realized the anger churning in his eyes that you had never seen before. Even his knuckles were turning white from the force. Lin Yu, is he all you talk about all day?" He stood up abruptly, his tall figure exuding a sense of oppression. "Spending hours with him at a cafe, and the first thing you say when you come back is about him? Did you ever think about how I feel?" You took a step back from his shouting, your chest tightening. "I'm just helping you deal with project matters. How can you say that? Helping me?" He sneered, the disappointment in his eyes piercing like needles. "I think you're enjoying it, aren't you? He's so attentive to you. Are you not moved at all?" That sentence was like a basin of cold water poured over your head, instantly reddening your eyes. "How can you doubt me? Is our relationship of so long really so unworthy in your eyes?" You squatted down to pick up the scattered documents, your fingers trembling with grievance. I help you follow up on the proposal every day, stay up late to organize data for you, and if you can't see that, fine, but to say this to me. He looked at your reddened eyes, his Adam's apple bobbing. His tone softened a little, but it still carried sharp thorns. I didn't say you were being inappropriate, but can't you keep some distance from him? The way he looks at you, do you think I'm blind? You're overthinking it. Lin Yu has a girlfriend, we're just classmates. You stood up to confront him, but tears still couldn't help falling. I understand you've been under a lot of stress lately, but you can't take it out on me, and you certainly can't doubt my feelings for you. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but ultimately just tugged at his tie in frustration and turned toward the balcony. I don't want to argue with you right now, think about it yourself. The door to the balcony closed, cutting off your view of each other. You looked at the documents scattered across the floor, then at the tightly closed balcony door, your chest feeling tight and suffocated. This was clearly for his own good, so how did it end up like this? That night, you slept in separate rooms. You lay in bed, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. Your ears were filled with the sound of his angry voice and the pounding of your own aggrieved heart. In the early hours of the morning, you heard the balcony door open. Footsteps stopped outside your bedroom door for a long time, but eventually he didn't come in. When you woke up the next morning, the living room had already been tidied up. The scattered documents were neatly placed on the coffee table, with a glass of warm milk sitting beside them. He had already gone to work, leaving only an unread message on your phone. I've gone to work. Breakfast is in the kitchen. You stared at that message, feeling a mix of sourness and bitterness in your heart. You knew what he said last night was said in anger, but those words of suspicion still stung like a thorn in your heart. For the next few days, you fell into a cold war. He still made you breakfast and washed and dried your clothes, but he no longer held you while sleeping like before, nor did he tell you about the company. You were like strangers living under the same roof, even speaking to each other with a careful sense of distance. On Friday, Lin Yu messaged you saying the final version of the proposal was ready. He wanted to treat you and your partner to a meal to finalize the plan. You hesitated for a long time, but eventually forwarded the message to him. He replied quickly, "Got it. Send me the time and location." During the meal, the atmosphere was incredibly subtle. Lin Yu seemed unaware of the tension between the two of you and was enthusiastically detailing the plan, occasionally looking at you with a smile and saying, "Luckily you were there to help explain, otherwise I definitely wouldn't have grasped the key points." You could feel the man beside you instantly tense up, his hand gripping his chopsticks tighter. You quickly interjected, "It's mainly because you're a professional, I just helped out a little." Halfway through the meal, Lin Yu received a phone call. His tone instantly softened, and he smiled into the phone saying, "I'll bring you bubble tea later." After hanging up, he explained to you somewhat embarrassedly, "It's my girlfriend, she's clamoring for bubble tea." You glanced at the man beside you and noticed that the tension in his eyes seemed to have eased a little, but he still didn't speak. After finishing the meal, Lin Yu left first. Before leaving, he made a point of saying to him, "Bro, if you need anything in the future, just ask, don't be a stranger." He simply nodded without saying much. On the way back, you sat in the car, neither of you speaking. The car radio played soothing music, but it couldn't relieve the silence in the cabin. As you approached the residential complex, you finally couldn't help but speak. "Do you believe me now? Lin Yu has a girlfriend, and we are just classmates." His hands gripping the steering wheel tightened, and his voice was low. Then why did you say those things to me that day?" You pressed, tears starting to well up in your eyes again. "Do you know how wronged I felt? I just wanted to help you. I never had any other intentions." The car stopped downstairs. He turned off the engine and turned to look at you. The light from the street lamp shone through the car window, allowing you to see the guilt in the depths of his eyes, along with a trace of imperceptible vulnerability. "I'm sorry." He reached out as if to touch your face, but was afraid you would dodge him. So his hand stopped in mid-air. "I shouldn't have lost my temper with you that day, and I shouldn't have doubted you." His voice was filled with remorse. "The project was suffocating me, and seeing you so close to him, I panicked. I was afraid. Afraid that you would think he was better than me, afraid that you would leave me." You froze. So behind his anger lay such insecurity. The person who always wore a facade of strength was actually afraid of loss too. Idiot. You couldn't help but reach out and hug him, pressing your cheek against his warm chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. "How could I leave you? Didn't we agree to face this together?" His body stiffened for a moment, then he hugged you back tightly, with a force that felt as if he wanted to mold you into his very bones. "I'm sorry, Zai Zai, I was such a jerk." His voice choked with emotion. "I will never doubt you again, and I will never lose my temper with you again." You patted his back, soothing him just like before. "I know you're under a lot of pressure. From now on, let's discuss things together. Don't carry it all alone, okay?" "Okay." He buried his face in the crook of your neck, his breath warm and moist against your skin. "I'll tell you everything from now on. I won't keep secrets anymore." That night you lay in the same bed, holding each other tightly just like before. He told you a lot about the project, how afraid he was of messing it up, and how terrified he was that he couldn't provide you with a good life. You listened quietly, occasionally rubbing his back and telling him, "It's okay, we'll take it slow." Later, the project finally started to show progress. Lin Yu's proposal helped a great deal, and he rebuilt his team. Although it was tiring, he was no longer in that state of constant tension where he felt like he could collapse at any moment. On weekends, he would actively take you to the park for walks, bake you cakes you loved, and just like before, hug you from behind while you were watching TV, resting his chin on the top of your head, saying, "Zai Zai, it's so good to have you." Once, you mentioned Lin Yu unintentionally. He paused for a second, then smiled and said, "Let's treat him and his girlfriend to a meal sometime to properly thank him." Looking at the openness in his eyes, you knew the crack between you had completely healed. Your anniversary arrived again. This time he started preparing a week in advance and even secretly ordered that necklace you had always wanted. In the evening, he cooked a table full of your favorite dishes, where he put the necklace on you. His gaze was so tender it could melt. "Zai Zai," he whispered in your ear as he held you. "I was wrong before I made you suffer. I will be by your side for every anniversary from now on, and I will never let you down again." You leaned in his arms looking at the flickering candlelight on the table, your heart filled with warmth. Yes, there will always be misunderstandings and arguments in a relationship, but as long as there is mutual trust and a willingness to yield for each other, there is no hurdle that cannot be overcome. The moonlight streams in through the window, falling upon your intertwined hands. The warmth of his palm seeps through your skin, steady and reassuring. It feels like a silent promise that no matter what storms lie ahead, he will keep holding your hand, walking this path together. This home belongs to the two of you. This love is yours too. Nothing can ever tear you apart, because you have long since woven each other's heartbeats into the very fabric of your lives.